This week on the show, we're joined by Scott Martin, a financial planner with Barnum Financial Group. Scott's greatest asset is his ability to actively listen and deliver individual client-centric solutions. He's here to share his experience in the industry and where he sees the future in the business taking him. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, Scott Martin, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so excited to have you here. And I really am impressed. I know you guys can't see this, but he's in his beautiful office in Santa Barbara, California. It's a wing of his home, so it's really nice. And great to have you on here. It looks like you're in an office building, so I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, and you know, Scott, I always like to start with the beginning of the career, but just for everyone to know, Scott and I, our paths crossed about 4 years ago before we get into the start of your career. They passed about 4 years ago, and he was in a pivotal point of his career where he was getting ready to make a major change. And we were fortunate enough to him and his partner, who you guys might have heard a couple of weeks ago, Judah, on our show, to partner up and come together. And it's been a great 4 years. But before we go there, let's start with, like, how did you end up in financial services, and, you know, what got you here first?
Sure. Well, my path has not been linear. Sometimes when you ask people about their path, it's they graduated from college with a degree in finance and they took their first job in one area of finance and then ultimately became an advisor. And mine was a little bit different. I'll go all the way back to when I was 3 years old. And I won't give you the whole life story, but I remember my dad flew me from Portland, where I grew up, to Seattle just so I could ride on an airplane. And this was 1974. So a very long time ago. Back then, you could visit the cockpit and talk to the pilots. And my first memory ever was that flight. And I fell in love with airplanes and aviation. And so from age 3 until age 19, what are you going to do when you grow up? Pilot. That was my path.
Now, was that your dad's intent?
No, he traveled a lot for work. And this lasted through my childhood, but whenever he came home, he'd bring me an airplane. You know, when you go to the airport and they sell little toy airplanes, he always brought one home for me. Cool. So I think that was just, as a little kid, I loved airplanes, was fascinated with flying. And so he wanted to give me an experience of flying on an airplane. So that was the trip to Seattle.
Well, that's good that you want to be a pilot, because most kids don't say they want to. I've only had one person that's here, I won't leave him nameless, that said to me during his interview, all my life since I was 3, I wanted to be a financial advisor. I'm like, come on, you didn't have like a fire hat on or a cop or keep going. So you wanted to be a pilot till 19.
I wanted to be a pilot. Fast forward to graduating high school, and was awarded scholarships from the Navy and the Air Force. I chose Air Force and came here to Santa Barbara. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and my ROTC courses were at Loyola Marymount University, which is in Los Angeles. So once a week I was driving to LA to attend classes. And this was in 1989. And that was the year, if anybody was around, they probably remember, that's when the Cold War essentially ended. That was the fall of the Berlin Wall. And there was a major shift in military spending that had occurred probably prior to that, but certainly escalated after the Cold War was over. And thankfully, I had a very open and honest and helpful colonel that led our group. And I had to sit down with him because I was concerned. I was seeing the upperclassmen, the juniors and seniors, really starting to panic a little bit, like they weren't going to get pilot slots. And he said, well, you've had enough time here. This is my freshman year. He said, you've had enough time to kind of assess your competition, as it were. Do you think you'll finish number 1 in your class in 3 years? And I said, well, wow. I like to think that I'm a good student. I'm smart and that I can compete pretty well against these guys. But no, I absolutely cannot say with certainty that I'm going to finish number 1 in my class. He said, well, then you might want to consider alternatives. If you're in this program and your intent is to graduate and become an officer and be a pilot, it could happen. But unfortunately, your timing is just bad. And for the first time, essentially since in decades, we're about to experience a major reduction in pilot slots. So you may want to really think this over and decide if you're going to be happy graduating from college, becoming an officer, but doing something else. And who knows, you might love it. And I did. I took the time to think about it. I talked to my dad and just decided I was not willing. This probably sounds bad, but I wasn't willing to gamble on myself at that moment. At the ripe old age of 18, I wasn't ready to commit the next 12 years of my life to something if I couldn't say with certainty I was going to be the best student in my entire class. It was terrifying.
It makes sense. And he didn't say going to be in the top 10. He said number one.
Number one. Yeah. Number one. Yeah, absolutely. That was
yeah.
Scary.
So what happened next?
So I talked to my dad and he said, okay, well, this is a pretty significant change. I was an out-of-state student. I was from Portland. I was going to school in California. He said, I'll make you a deal. I'll cover your first 2 years. And because, it was a full ride, that's a pretty dramatic shift financially for my dad. And so he said, I'll cover the first 2 years and you cover your junior and senior years. I said, okay, deal. And so I worked through college, and my junior, senior years, I was working full time, going to school full time, and graduated early. That was motivation to be a good student and to finish actually a quarter early because I was paying for it. And that was a good life lesson. It taught me that I could still achieve my goal of getting a college degree, but upon graduating, I was going to be doing something totally different. So started in finance in any case, right? So I guess I did in a way have the traditional entry into finance working at a bank. That seemed like a good path to be on. And after a couple of years was actually recruited by my brother-in-law. He had transitioned from sales at a major insurance company into sales management. So he recruited me into a sales role. So at 25 years old, I became an insurance agent, owned my own agency, was a business owner. And that was my first experience, being an entrepreneur and understanding at a very young age what it took to survive, first of all, not get washed out, but then thrive in that environment. So that was my entree was in actually property and casualty and life insurance.
I was just going to clarify. So it was property and casualty, and you started just scratch by yourself. And
I did.
Good for you.
Started from scratch and then did that for about 5 years and then made another turn, and I'll spare you all the details, but made a turn with a move to California from the Northwest and was working for a national real estate consulting firm. So we did due diligence, feasibility, market studies. And essentially, I was acting as a real estate economist, for all intents and purposes, for public builders and developers. And I loved it. So for about 9 years, I had different roles within this consulting firm. At one point, I had 100 employees that reported to me, and they were researchers. So they were on the ground in major housing markets in the US. So I was traveling a lot to the major housing markets, and I loved it. Absolutely loved what I was doing. But part of our job was to forecast what was happening in the broader economy and the real estate market. And in 2006 and certainly in 2007, we knew what was about to happen. We didn't know how bad it was going to be, when exactly it was going to happen, but we saw the indications that the housing market was overheated. There were some incredibly loose lending standards that were probably not going to last too long. And so, of course, 2008 happened and we had a pretty fundamental shift in our practice where we became litigation support team, I should say. So we were essentially expert witnesses. And so now, instead of looking forward and kind of the excitement of seeing these communities built and feeling like you had a part in some of these really cool housing developments and mixed use projects and all the things that I really enjoyed, ended. And we saw that we weren't going to have a V-shaped recovery. It was going to take several years to see improvement. And it just really felt to a lot of us like we were going to be looking backwards for a few years. And so I went back to the Northwest, actually at that time, bought another insurance agency and just thought, okay, I'll ride out this rough patch. And thankfully I bought low and kind of with the intent to sell high in a few years. And that's exactly what I did. So that worked out quite well. But what had changed in that time from my first stint as an insurance agent to now fast forwarding to 2009 was I was able to get securities licensed and expand the practice. So I got my first taste of comprehensive financial planning. Instead of being more of a risk manager and helping, let's say, with estate planning, things like that, it was much more comprehensive. And I really enjoyed that. And so I continued on until 2014 and then decided I need something more. I need to, and one of my clients was a CFP, and I asked him, how do you like doing what you're doing? And he really sold me. So one of my clients said, you need to get your CFP, get your CIMA, and one or both. And that will allow you to take the next step to become an actual financial advisor, a comprehensive planner versus an insurance agent that's helping people with risk management. And so that's what I did.
It's interesting. Today we have, I spoke to our new hire class that just got hired in August. And I told them, I said, you have to have one of my top 10 things was life of learning. And you have to get your designations, all your C designations. Congratulations on getting both of them early in this stint of your career. But I said, guys, in the early to mid 2000s, I was sending out every other week articles in the journal, Kiplinger's money, that they said, tell someone to, if they don't have a CFP, don't do business with them. If they don't have this, don't do that. And I said, it takes the silent objection away, but also the knowledge that you gain is incredible that just sets you apart from the rest of the industry. So, good for you and good for that guy that gave you that advice.
Yeah. I think I remember when I was in high school and one of my teachers was talking about the value of college. He said, it helps you think. It helps you take what may seem like overwhelming or abstract subjects or concepts and really develop a mode of thinking and working through problems and problem solving. And he was right. And the CFP for me did the same thing. It really allowed me to help clients more effectively because I am much better now at taking what often seem like a lot of disparate pieces of data and conflicting goals, et cetera, and formulating a plan and helping people through the process of going from uncertainty and maybe being a little scared and not making decisions in all areas of their plan because of the unknowns and then clarifying and helping them take action. And I really enjoy that. So yeah, it was great advice. And that entree into comprehensive planning was with MetLife, and I had actually accepted an offer somewhere else, and I received a phone call from a MetLife recruiter, and I said, "Oh, thank you, but no, I have a position I'm starting in January." And she said, "Well, what do you have to lose?" It was one of those, right? Hey, it looks like you have this background in property and casualty insurance and life insurance. And I know you want to be a comprehensive planner, but wouldn't you like to be able to help people in all those areas and be compensated for all those things? And I was like, oh, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. So met with the managing director at MetLife and started in October of 2015. And as you know, because you experienced this early in 2016, there was the change with Met and Mass Mutual. And so Judah and I had already started working together, and we just decided, hey, let's ride this out. And if this is good for us, we'll stay. And if it's not, if it ends up being a bad change for us, then we'll do something else. And that's how we've been working together ever since. We've always had that same mindset, which is let's make sure we're happy and that we're able to help our clients and build our business in a way that makes sense for us. And that really continued to be the case until you and I spoke I think it was 2001, and things had changed, right? And we don't have to
2021. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we can skip all the reasons why, but there was a pretty fundamental change for Judah and I, and we decided it's time for us to do something else. And thank goodness I'm so happy that Elizabeth reached out and we had a great conversation, and couldn't be happier to be at Barnum now. And that change that we made, it has made a huge impact on our trajectory and allowed us to grow at a rate and do things with our team, not just now, but in the years ahead, that I don't think we could have done anywhere else.
And that's awesome. And I appreciate that. And I think what's funny is it's about asking questions too, because I remember I wasn't involved in the conversation, but I remember when Elizabeth came to me and said that, when we took over PlanSmart nationally, and you and Judah were part of that, and you had been doing that teaching for like 4 years, and you guys had been really well and acquiring a lot of clients, and you decided to drop out of the program. And she was very upset about that because it was a market. Seattle was a market where we needed coverage, and you guys were covering it really well. And she said, "Why are you dropping out?" And you said, "Well, I'm leaving. I can't, if I could stay and if I could still do this and go somewhere else, I would." And she said, "Why are you leaving?" That's how the whole conversation triggered, which if she didn't ask that question, we might not have met, and our businesses and lives might have been different to where they are today. So really exciting. Can we talk about the Judah piece for a second?
Of course.
It's interesting to me because teaming has become something very important in this industry today. And there's a lot of buzzwords today, but one of them in business is scale, right? And you have to have scalability to grow. And when you team, you get that scalability. But I've also learned that sometimes it's forced teaming doesn't work. And I think there's been a lot of advisors that have done that in the industry. And I feel like you and him just were in the office together, got to know each other, and then just decided that let's try working together, see how this works. So it wasn't a forced, am I correct in saying that? And then it just materialized from there?
Right. So one of the managers at MetLife who recruited Judah recommended that he run a meeting with me because this client that Judah was working with had some tax questions, and that's, I would say, my area of expertise. And so I went to a meeting, talked to this client, we closed the deal. We interacted really well together. We knew each other, but we hadn't spoken a lot, just kind of hi in the hallway kind of thing. And we went, wow, that went pretty well. Let's do it again. And we had a pretty good run. I think it was 6 meetings in a row, prospect meetings, right? These weren't clients, these were prospects. And we closed every single one of them. So very quickly, we realized we had a very good working relationship, a good dynamic. We were just kind of natural fit. It was definitely not forced. It was that we enjoyed working with each other and we found early success. And so we decided to formalize that team. It was just the two of us. That was our team. We were a formal team and we're happy to find that our goals aligned. And to this day, knock on wood, Judah and I have never had a fight. We have had discussions. Rarely are they heated, but we have gone through a lot together in it's actually 9 years now. And I don't think I've ever had a relationship like this where there have been some incredibly stressful and life-changing decisions we've made together, and we've just gotten through it. And he's like my little brother, I would say. So I think that's a testament to the two of you when I see how you guys interact and the synergies that there. So really good stuff. Yeah. He truly is like my little brother. He and Katie were married here in Santa Barbara a year ago, and I married them. And I thought, well, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. Right. So yeah, we have a special relationship. I value it. And it is something that gives me one of the questions that you sent over before we spoke, on the list was kind of that purpose. And part of my purpose now is that succession, right? The next generation. And it's really been great over the years when I talk to clients to be able to share with them when they ask, because clients do get concerned with, well, what happens when you retire, right? We're talking about our retirement, but I assume you're not going to do this for the rest of your life. And the answer is, no, I have a retirement plan. And so it's really been a huge value to be able to honestly address that issue with clients and know that I have a succession plan and that our team is structured so that we can continue to help these clients regardless of our individual life changes as advisors. Well, I'm glad you said that. I had this conversation literally 2 days ago with an advisor that's 52. Mm-hmm. And we have an advisor here that she's probably in her 40s now, but when she was like 30, she was on a team with a guy that was in his mid 60s and he looked younger. But I said to him one day, I said, hey,
are clients asking you? Because he kept saying, I'm never retiring. He's probably 68 years old at the time. And he goes, yeah, they're asking me all the time. They make me feel old. But now that, because I have this person on my team, I'm able to answer that question really well. And I asked this advisor, brought this up to me the other day. He was 52 and he said, clients asking me that. So I joked with him and said, you look pretty old. That's probably why. But he said, come on. I said, no, but it's just like the CFP. It's the silent objection that good that the clients did ask, some of them, but some of them don't.
Right.
And they just leave in the night because they don't think there's a plan. Or if you're traveling frequently, even though you're working, some clients are wondering who's back at the ranch.
Right.
So you have to have that value prop and that infrastructure so that you get that support. So really, I know that it wasn't purposeful in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You guys met to say, oh, this is my succession plan. But once it worked out, it's really exciting. Now, he's not expecting you to retire anytime soon, though. So be careful of that.
Well, I have seen with my clients that have retired and continued to be engaged, whether that's part-time work, whether it's volunteering, teaching, which I love, but staying engaged, having purpose. And part of longevity, it sounds like studies are proving this point, that when people are actively engaged in something and they feel like they have purpose and they're enjoying retirement, but it's a different kind of retirement than what you and I probably grew up thinking. Okay, you quit working, that's it. You have a giant party, and then it's just leisure time, 24/7. That isn't maybe as fulfilling for everybody. And I certainly put myself in that category where I hope that I can continue to work with clients, especially the ones that I like working with the most, that we've developed really deep friendships with. And I would like to keep doing that and have purpose. So I don't have a date certain where at this age, I am going to ride off into the sunset. I hope to spend less time working and still be available to help where needed. So that we can do that in this industry, especially with the change we've seen over the past 4 years with remote meetings. That's been a game changer. It's been the single biggest change in our business that I've ever seen.
Yeah, 100%. And then I say that pretty much every episode, that a lot of bad came from COVID, but a lot of good. Mm-hmm. And the way we're able to do that, even what we're doing today. But it's interesting. I was a big avid reader of Peter Drucker stuff most of my early part of my career, big fan of his. And he had a great saying. He said, you have to retire to something.
Right.
If you retire to something, you die. And in certain industries like this one, you can still work and do things and still be stimulated, but and what's amazing is I've just seen in the 4 years that I've been working with you, just how you've shifted and grown personally and professionally, and why walk away from something like that if you can continue to do that, as long as you can have the quality of life that you want for yourself. So yeah, let's dig into current, where the team is. And, I've watched you like 5, 6, probably 7x the business in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. And you went from a team of 2 to, I want you to share what the team looks like today. But I'd love to hear where it is today and then where you see it going in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you recommended Judah and I do a few years ago was read and put into practice traction, which we did. And I'll give Judah 90% of the credit for keeping us on track and consistent with utilizing the traction and the system. It's been a huge help for us. And so we developed our 10-year plan or 5-year plan or 3, and that, kind of working backwards to a big goal has really been helpful. So to answer your question, yes, Judah and I came over. So it was a team of 2, and we now have 14. And we have our office in Seattle. We have advisors. So our team is Barnum West. And so maybe ironic that 3 of our advisors are in New York, but that's okay.
I know.
So the goal is to continue growing the team. We have 3 operational employees in Seattle, and the rest of us are advisors and business development associates. And so we want to grow in a way that is smart, right? We don't want to just hire a bunch of people for the sake of hiring them and have things get out of control. We have a very strong team. Everybody gets along. I love that. That's important. And so we want to be smart about it, but we do see ourselves in 3 more years doubling again, right? So I expect that we'll have 30 people when we talk again in 3 years. As you mentioned earlier, the Plan Smart program allows us to do this. It would look quite a bit different if we weren't participating in Plan Smart and Transition Solutions. So with Retirewise, I'm able to talk to a lot of people. So I can spend 1 hour talking to anywhere from 10 to 200 people, which I love. Very efficient use of time. And then, of course, meet with them after for one-on-one consultations and when it makes sense, engage them as clients. And then Transition Solutions, as you talk about in the other podcasts, generates 800,000 to a million individuals for our firm to talk to. And that is not something you can get anywhere else. It's very unique. And so we value that. And that really makes it possible to think big. So when we think about our 3, 5, and 10-year goals and you look at the numbers we have on paper, they seem outlandish, but they're not. They're achievable. And so I'm excited. That keeps me motivated. And early on in my career, I was motivated by money, right? My markers were how much money am I going to make? How do I get there? Not at the expense of everything else, but that was the barometer. Ultimately, at the end of the day, are you successful or not? It was just money. And I really see things differently now. I mean, of course, that's a component of success, I suppose, but I really measure success by the success of my team members. And it gives me such pride and joy to see the new advisors improving. And that even goes, and Judah may not like this part, but he's grown so much. His improvement, I'm so proud of what he's done in the past 8 years and just listening to him speak and present. And I feel like I've had a small part in that. And I remember we would debrief after meetings and I would coach him on ways he might be able to improve, say things a little bit different. He would do the same. We helped each other. But that gives me the most pleasure in terms of when you say team, I think of the improvement and the advisors achieving their goals. That's what makes me happy. On the client side, it's completely different. I love seeing them with a sense of calm and knowing what their future holds with a little bit more certainty. But yeah, from a team building standpoint, I really measure success by how well is everybody doing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And listen, I have to commend you guys too, that when you think of having ideas and putting it on paper and putting the numbers, then there has to be execution. And, when you think about traction, there's probably 40% of the people that I've told to do it that have taken it and done it, maybe 50. And then there's probably only 20 or 25 that have kept going. Right. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have an operating model, whatever it is, doesn't matter if it's traction or something else. How do you hold yourself accountable? How do you plan? How do you develop? And then the other thing that I always remember being in one office and now multiple offices all over the country, including you guys. And people used to say to me, well, I'm not in Shelton, Connecticut, where all the value prop is, where all the associates are. And so I can't use them effectively. And now that's off the table, but I look at you guys when you use our resources here, probably as much or better than most teams. And you've only been to Shelton one time.
I've never been to Shelton. Judah was there once.
Yeah, Judah was here once.
Yeah.
So I'd love to understand how you are thinking about that as a business owner, because you have these, and I think it's a great testament to the two of you, how you're utilizing the tools around you.
I'm going to give Matthew Pemley, our operations manager, credit for that. He's amazing. He won an award last year, one of the top operational or administrative support individuals in the whole MassMutual system. But Matthew has done an amazing job at taking advantage of the resources, maximizing what's available, and really improving our efficiencies. So earlier today, I was talking to Jeff on our team, and he asked me a question about the new Wright Bridge, and I just shook my head and said, I have no idea. He's like, what do you mean?
You're getting like me.
I'm like, I don't know. That's what Matthew handles it. If I haven't heard him say anything about it, that's good news. I mean, there's no problem. So I guess everything's going great. So Barnum, as I have described this to clients as well, because I think it's important for them to know the support we have as advisors, I describe it as being second to none in providing the resources that allow advisors to spend their time with prospects and clients and to do the right thing. We have a responsibility. We are fiduciary advisors. We must do, and we do act in our clients' best interest. And for me, that means that I'm focused on them as much as humanly possible, that I don't get caught up in a lot of the operational items that are critical, right? They're important, but we have an obligation, in my opinion, to hire a team to handle that. So we could not have grown to the point that we are now without Barnum and without the support we have from Barnum. And we would not be able to achieve our aggressive goals for the future without Barnum as well. So yeah, it's huge. I mean, as an advisor, when I don't have to think about or be involved on a day-to-day basis in a lot of the processing elements, or, if I'm just client facing as much as humanly possible, that is a huge win.
Yeah. And by the way, it's more fun too. And
absolutely.
I talk a lot about, and there's many firms that I believe are doing this, but when you look at your profit margins as an advisor, sometimes if you don't have the resources around you, when you think of, back to your first business, which was a property and casualty agency, it was all you. And you had to, so now you leveraging stuff here and I can't do what you do. So as a business owner, we're really become partners. So it's right. Really exciting. So what's next? I mean, I know you're going to grow, but I guess before I go to what's next, has your day to day changed? And it sounds like it dramatically. You just answered it. Like, you're a client saying pretty much all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to that conversation with Elizabeth, when we were talking about Retirewise, all of the presentations were in person, which I actually miss that. There's a certain level of energy and engagement you get speaking to a group in person that I really do miss.
I had 2 people tell me that yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, I miss it, but it wasn't as efficient as having Zoom meetings, right? And so that was a huge shift in our business in 2020, because we had this gap where companies weren't immediately adopting Retirewise presentations over Zoom. It actually took quite a while. So that has been the biggest shift in my entire career, the transition to be able to meet with people all over the US, whether it's on a one-on-one setting or whether it's presenting. So that has allowed us to grow. That allows the scale, because we just simply could not meet with as many people as it takes to meet with to grow to the level that we want to grow to. So
yeah, it's interesting you say that. So the new hire class here at Barnum, the norm in the industry when I started and you started, there was always this 15, C15, sell 10,
right.
Book 10, C10, sell 3.
Right.
And I said to them, the new scene today is like 35. Because if you build the right infrastructure around you and all you're doing is client meetings, maybe and I said, it's very personal because some people take longer on calls and want to give more time, but it's 25 to 35 versus 15. And so that's a natural growth trajectory. And as for all the advisors listening and entrepreneurs, when you get, as Scott described, this great gift of Zoom, it helps drive the amount of people you get in front of, which naturally drives your business. But we're not going to get that gift again. So now it becomes a different game where you have to find those scalability opportunities to build a different distribution model to continue to grow. So, and obviously going from 2 to 14 and then 14 to 30, you're figuring that out as you go. So congratulations.
Right. Thank you.
Last question. If you were starting over again, would you have taken the path you did, meaning going from the pilot versus like what you said earlier, like most of the young professionals we hired are 22 coming out of the campus? Mm-hmm. Or would you have done the same way that you landed where you are today because you got some experience along the way? So I'd just love to know that.
Sure. Well, I'll answer it this way. If someone asked me, was my path the most logical and most efficient to becoming a financial advisor, to becoming a CFP, et cetera, I would say no. I have to be honest. But I wouldn't do anything differently because the experiences are invaluable. And the wins and the losses teach you so much. And so I feel like I'm a better advisor because of the abnormal path that I took, and my knowledge base and skill set is stronger than it would have been if I took a more traditional route.
Yeah, I would have bet you were going to answer it like that. If I was asked the question for you, I would have said that. And I think that it just shows that as an entrepreneur, some of those learnings that you get throughout your process, because you went from, one role to an entrepreneurial role to another, and then you hit a crisis. Mm-hmm. And then your company gets sold as the same time that you make the move, right? And you had to make a lot of major decisions to land where you've landed. And, I have this great saying that the best is yet to come. Well, I could tell you that the amount of business that you guys have grown and built over the last 4, I can't wait to see where it is, and I will have you back on the show. And it's amazing, Scott. So super proud of you guys, and super proud of the relationship and the way you've built it. And it was really nice to hear that, I was taught if you take care of clients and their pockets, then yours get taken care of. Mm-hmm. Money was not the most important thing to me at that stage of my career. And that's always worked. And now I do what you're doing. I pay it forward with advisors and the associates. And now you're doing that, and great things happen. And really proud of you and your growth. And I think what's exciting is one of the 10 things I gave today was get comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And through all those changes, you had to be very uncomfortable.
Right.
And yes. You got comfortable with being uncomfortable. So really congratulations. And when I think of the show, Small Steps, Big Wins, well, you took small, major steps in different parts of your career, but you just kept layering them, and you were ready. You were ready for the opportunity that came your way when we were able to meet, where if you weren't game ready, it might not have ended the way it did, or started the way it did. So congratulations on that. And thank you for being on the show today. For everybody that's out there, go on Apple, go on Spotify, please share. We've been getting great reviews and great ratings. Please keep that going. And Scott Martin, like I said, congratulations on all your success.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it so much. Thanks for everything you do for us.
No, you got it. And the weather is the best it's ever in September in Connecticut, but I'm a little jealous of where you are in Santa Barbara. So have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Paul.
See you, Scott. Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.